the first episode of Elementary, and this is going to be a deep dive into Season 1, Episode 1. If you haven't already seen this episode, I would encourage you to take a look, as there will be some spoilers in today's deep dive. Now, let's have a little bit of a look on this, shall we? The modern day adaptation of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic Sherlock Holmes story. I'll be taking a deep dive into the pilot episode of the hit crime drama Elementary. Join me as I explore the characters, themes, and cinematic qualities of this intriguing and immersive show. Now, guess what? The characters, amazing. So I will be exploring the characters, the themes, especially looking at the cinematic qualities which we mentioned, from Sherlock Holmes' unique quirks and mannerisms to Joan Watson, we should say Dr. Joan Watson's unexpected turn as a sober companion. We'll explore what makes the characters so compelling and relatable. We'll also discuss the visual style of storytelling, especially the techniques used in the episode, from the moody cinematography to the use of on-screen text and flashbacks. So there is like a nice overall arching opinion on this. You will find it interesting. Now, these insights and opinions are going to be mine. I will be taking some guests and voice notes from additional people that like this series. There's a Reddit forum where we've got a number of people who are as in tune with Elementary as I am. We all like it. We'll have our own views, so I will hopefully share my opinions and take on your opinions, which we can share in later episodes as well. And who knows, you might even learn a thing or two about crime solving and detective work along the way. So grab your magnifying glass and let's dive into the world of Elementary. So in the pilot episode, we're introduced to Sherlock Holmes. He's a recovering drug addict and former consultant for Scotland Yard. So this is an interesting point here. We're going to be joined in a new location. We're used to seeing adaptations in London, but this was an amazing turnaround because we looked at how he relocated to New York City to start a new life he's soon hired. So what happens is he's moved to New York City and he gets hired by the NYPD to help solve a murder case. And he's paired up with Dr. Joan Watson. And this is where it gets a little bit interesting because it's not your standard view. If you've not already seen the episode, you'll know Dr. Joan Watson is actually a lady, a sober companion who's been hired to help him stay clean. Together they work to solve the case, but they soon realize that there's more to murder than meets the eye. Now we're going to be looking in later sections at deep diving about the scene overview. I'm going to be looking at the bits of the Elementary episode, like a bullet point of what happens in this episode, the bits that stuck out to me. I'm sure there will be sections that stick out to you more than they do to me. I will also look at quotes, the most memorable quotes from this episode. So I think you'll find that interesting. As well as actors and performances. So we'll look at the actor breakdown, the character breakdown, how we're introduced to each character in this episode. I'll cover the main characters because there's quite a few supporting characters here as well, actors. And also I'll look at other projects that these characters were working on at the same time as Elementary, because they would have been featuring in other shows. We'll look at the writers, the cinematography, and then I'll summarize and I'll give you a little bit at the end where we can get involved. So yeah, I think that's a nice overview just to set your expectations of how the show will flow. I've given you a little bit of an overview there. The chemistry between Johnny Lee Miller, who plays Sherlock, and Lucy Liu, who plays Watson, it's electric from the start. You'll have to say the way it all starts off, it's very like you're straight into it. I will say if you've come from BBC Sherlock, this is like a slightly different adaptation, so you need to give this a few episodes to get warmed up to how this flows, because when I first came from BBC Sherlock to this, from the Reddit forum, people suggested, oh, you should watch Elementary. That's a nice passing on from BBC Sherlock's episodes. And I first watched the first one. I was like, this seems like a bit of a punch down version of Sherlock. And it was, obviously, this is the pilot episode that we're reviewing here. So it's just setting the scenes, the expectations. Slowly it builds up. I will cover this in more detail. And we can see how this gets better. So yeah, I'm getting excited now. So as Watson tries to get to know Sherlock, he rebuffs her, saying, there's a couple of quotes in here I wanted to mention. He's saying, I'm not a puzzle person. But she's quick to reply, that's good because I'm not a puzzle solver. It's a great back and forth that shows a potential for their dynamic. So normally Sherlock would assume himself being more clever than everybody else. But when Watson comes back to him, he gives him a bit of like, oh, okay, she's going to be a bit of a fighter. And well, she, which would normally be a he, because it would be Watson, would be the actual character. So there's a different adaptation. Get your head around that. That's an interesting one. Also, later on, there's a few spoilers where there's some more interesting character changes. One thing that sets Elementary apart from other adaptations of the Sherlock Holmes story is, of course, New York City as a backdrop. The city is almost a character in itself, and we see glimpses of it throughout the episode as Sherlock and Watson investigate a murder. They visit a deli in Harlem, and the scene is full of colourful characters and dialogue. When Watson tells the deli owner they're looking for a suspect, he replies, oh, you mean the guy who comes in here for free samples? Yeah, pretty sure he's the Ripper. The show always does a little bit of extra surprising elements to it. It's a nice flow, it's something you can watch and relax to, and does a great job of setting up the potential for character development. When Watson tells Sherlock that she's used to being a surgeon but had to quit, he asks her why. She replies, because I killed someone. Now, it's a dark moment that adds an additional layer to her character and sets up potential for future storylines. Let me revisit the opening scene and give you like a bit of an overview of what we're expecting in this episode and what I liked about it. So the opening scene is actually quite interesting. You see a slight flashback in the pilot episode of something going on, a bit of like a kerfuffle, a lady dropping and a bit of glass and all sorts of little things. Watch back on the episode to familiarize yourself. I'm sure you're going to be more buffs than I am with a full specification of everything that happened. I think I've seen the entire series maybe once all over and then twice. So I'm sure there's people out there who have seen this more times than I have. So it comes up with obviously Joan starting. So she wakes up, just a bit of setting up of the scene. So you're kind of familiarizing yourself, thinking what's going on here. And of course, Joan is Watson. So she slowly wakes up, she goes for a little run, and then she gets ready for her day. And then she makes her way to the house, which is going to be 221B Baker Street, however, which is not Baker Street because it's in New York. And she sees through the window, quotus, Sherlock doing his thing, exercise, whatever you want to call that. And he uses that as a form of exercise. Obviously, there's no emotion involved in what he likes to do with the opposite sex. So that slowly transitions to the lady leaving the house, Joan entering through that door that's been opened. She makes her way up the stairs, and that's when she sees Sherlock standing there, bareback. He's got trousers on, he's just not wearing a shirt, and he's standing in front of all his televisions. So that infamous scene where he's got multiple TVs that he's looking at. And I think overall that's like a nice little overview. If you can think back, it'll be good for you to actually comment, or I might put a thing at the end of this. What's the first words that are spoken in the first episode? That's like a bit of a quiz question for you. It'd be interesting to see how many of you can answer that. Okay, so Johnny Lee Miller is who plays Sherlock. He delivers an outstanding performance as a quirky, unconventional Sherlock Holmes, bringing his own unique spin to the character. And a little bit about the overall chemistry between Millam's Holmes and Lucy's Lou's Joan Watson is immediately evident, setting up like an intriguing dynamic for the rest of the series. The mystery surrounding the murder of Emma Whitson is complex and well constructed, so there's like a nice little overview there, keeping the audience guessing until the very end. So from the start you see a bit of a flashback type situation, and it kind of keeps you intrigued. Oh, what was that? What's going to happen? The show's modern and gritty take on Sherlock Holmes' story is refreshing and unique, providing a fresh perspective on a classic character. The production values are high, with sleek and stylish cinematography, editing, and visual effects that help to elevate the story. They use like the flashbacks and the linear story, so non-linear, so obviously it's loads of little scattered bit storytelling, adding extra layer of complexity and intriguing to the episode. The supporting cast, I'll talk a little bit more about each character, but I wanted to go on to a little bit of section about the quotes that I liked from this. So here's one. I'm not a consulting detective. I'm a recovering drug addict with a penchant of British crime dramas. What? With a penchant for British crime dramas. I can't say that word properly. Penchant. Let me know how you say that. Okay, it's a process of elimination. Whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Sherlock Holmes, that's number 2. Number 3, in this pilot episode, these are all quotes. The big problem in telling fantasy and reality apart is they're both ridiculous. Sherlock Holmes. I find people who've convinced they're going to hell much more interesting. I find people who've convinced they're going to hell much more interesting. I said that a bit wrong there, but yeah. If I don't feel alive, I don't see the point in living. Another one. I'm your sober companion, not your friend. I'm not a doctor, I'm a surgeon. I used to save lives. Now I just make them more comfortable. Guess who that one was by? That's a question for you. Okay, so overall, let's have a quick look at the actors and their performances and a breakdown of the characters. That'll be a nice section to move on to, I think. Johnny Lee Miller plays Sherlock Holmes, and he brings a unique take on the character. He's rough around the edges, dealing with addiction issues, but still manages to convey the intelligence and seductive reasoning that we expect from a Sherlock Holmes character. Lucy Liu plays Dr. Joan Watson, and her portrayal is a departure from the traditional character. She's intelligent, compassionate, and brings a quiet strength to the role. Aidan Quinn plays Captain Gregson. Do you know his first name? Let me see. That's a test for you. What's Captain Gregson's first name? I've got it here, but I want to just put it out there, get you thinking. The head of the NYPD's homicide division, and he brings a sense of authority and gravitas to the role. John Michael Hill plays Detective Marcus Bell, a member of the NYPD's homicide division, and he brings a no-nonsense approach to the role. Let's have a little bit of a dive into these characters. So, character breakdown. I'm not going to go too deep. I'm going to keep it. We'll see how it progresses. Over the episodes, we might end up doing these like more in detail. I'll take your views on that. We can work out how it sounds best. Miller's version of Sherlock Holmes is unique in that he's dealing with these addictions. So we've covered him. Johnny Lee Miller is Sherlock Holmes. And the version he does, it's very interesting character. He's got a few vulnerabilities that they show quite early on. This complexity, and the appearance is a bit messy as well. So it's interesting. So yeah, normally he's very smart and suave, but as we go through the episodes, you'll notice he starts getting a bit more smartened up. Lucy Liu as Dr. John Watson. Joan, Joan Watson, so not John. Lucy's version of Watson is a departure from the traditional character. Instead of being a sidekick to Sherlock, she's his sober companion, hired to keep him on the straight and narrow. Liu brings a quiet strength to the character, and her performance is subtle but effective. She's always dealing with her own personal demons, having left a successful career as a surgeon after a tragic event, which we find out in later episodes what that was in a breakdown, so keep tuned for those. Liu does a great job of conveying the character's intelligence and compassion, and her chemistry with Miller is a highlight of the show. So that nice riff-raff between them is a nice rolling theme throughout the entire episode, as you would expect. And then Aidan Quinn as Captain Gregson. Quinn plays the role of Captain Tobias Gregson. I've told you his name there. The head of NYPD's homicide division. He's initially skeptical of Sherlock's abilities, but comes to respect his method as they work together on a murder case. Quinn brings a sense of authority and gravitas to the role, and his character serves as a bridge between the police department and Sherlock and Watson. These are a couple of the main characters, and then we also see John Michael Hill as Detective Marcus Bell. Hill plays the role of Detective Marcus Bell, a member of the NYPD's Homicide Division who works closely with Captain Gregson. Bell is initially skeptical of Sherlock's abilities as well, but he comes to respect his deductive reasoning skills as they work together on the case. Hill brings a no-nonsense approach. He's very straightforward, kind of officer of the law type situation. And something I noticed is, during this timeline of these characters, the characters must have been doing some other work at the same time as Elementary. This is kind of 2012-ish kind of year. So at the same time as Elementary, other productions around the same time as the filming of the show's first episode, filmed over a relatively short period of time. It's unlikely that any of the characters would have been working on other projects simultaneously, but there is some here that I want to mention about. So Johnny Lee Miller, Sherlock Holmes, had a small role in the film Byzantium, which was released in 2012. Lucy Liu appeared in the film Man with the Iron Fists, which was also released in 2012. And Aidan Quinn had a supporting role in the film Across the Line, The Exodus of Charlie Wright, which was released in about 2010. And John Michael Hill, which is Detective Marcus Bell, appeared in the episode of TV series Law and Order Special Victims Unit, which aired about 2012. So during that period, they were working on multiple projects, especially in this episode, because we're looking at the pilot episode right now. So I wanted to give you an idea of the other things they were working on, the projects. Let's have a look at a little bit about the writers. I think the writers is a very interesting area to think about. The writing in this episode is sharp and engaging. When Watson asks Sherlock what he's doing to stay sober, he replies, "I'm sweating it out." It's a simple line, but it speaks volumes about the character's determination and the challenges he's facing. The pilot episode of Elementary was written by Robert Doherty, who also created the series. Doherty is a television writer. The producer, who is working on several other shows before Elementary. So before creating Elementary, Doherty was a writer and executive producer of the hit series Medium, which ran over 7 seasons on NBC and CBS. He also wrote for the critically acclaimed HBO series Carnival and the short-lived ABC series Point Pleasant. In addition to this, his work on television, Doherty also written for several films, including horror film 13 Ghosts and the action thriller Derailed. Overall, Doherty has had a successful career in television and film, and his experience and talent as a writer and producer are evident in the quality of the pilot episode of Elementary, which does get even better as we move along, as I mentioned earlier. Let's have a little look around the cinematography, because I wanted to cover this because it's an interesting way they record this. The pilot episode of Elementary features a number of impressive cinematic qualities that help to elevate the story and create a distinct visual style. One of the most notable aspects of the episode is the use of cinematography to create a dark and moody atmosphere. The show is set primarily in New York City, but rather than relying on bright and bustling cityscapes, the episode leans into the city's more shadowy and foreboding aspects, relying on just the demeanor of the lower lit locations. The lighting and camera work are used to create a sense of tension and unease, reflecting the dark underbelly of the city and the complex mysteries that Holmes and Watson must unravel. The visual effects in the episode are more impressive, with the use of on-screen text and graphics to help convey information and clues to the audience. This adds an extra layer of intrigue and complexity, I can't say that word, and complexity to the episode, as the audience must pay close attention to the details in order to follow along with the story. Another notable cinematic quality is the use of flashbacks and non-linear storytelling. The episode jumps back and forth between different methods and moments in time, gradually revealing more information about the case and the characters. This creates a sense of depth and complexity as the audience is given a glimpse into the characters' backstories and motivations. Overall, the cinematic qualities of the pilot episode of Elementary are impressive and effective, adding to the show's unique visual style and helping to create a compelling and immersive world for the audience. Now, I reckon, as a summary, I want to give you a summary and then I'm going to give you my points of view. So I've written down some notes which I've been going through right now, so that was very scripted, but I'm going to do a bit of free flowing towards the end of this summary to explain what I liked, what I didn't like, the things that stuck out to me, and hopefully that gives you a little bit more insight into how I viewed the show, which I think you'll enjoy. So overall, the pilot episode of Elementary is a great start to the series. It sets up a complex and engaging relationship between Sherlock and Watson, introduces us to a unique version of the character, and takes advantage of New York City as a backdrop. If you're a fan of detective stories or just looking for something new to watch, Elementary is definitely worth a watch. Overall, the cast of Elementary is strong, and each actor brings something unique to their respective roles. The chemistry between Miller and Lou is a standout, and the supporting cast adds depth and complexity to the show. That's my take on the pilot episode of Elementary, but I'm sure everyone watching the show has their own unique viewpoints and insights. If you'd like to share your thoughts or suggest something that I may have missed, I'd love to hear from you. Leave me a voice note and I may even feature it on the next episode of this podcast. Now, this is going to work interestingly because I know everybody around the world has different time zones. So I want to be able to feature your opinions, the best bits from each episode. I'll put out a little post explaining I'm writing the next episode. Let me know your thoughts, and you can just give me a segment or recorded voice note. It can be simply as your mobile phone voice notes, which you then attach to an email and then email to me, and I can introduce that into the show. I'll share the email address once I've set that up. So yes. Now, that was my overview of the show. Going back, I really like the fact that the magnifying glass, that would be like an old school version of a magnifying glass. This time in Sherlock, he doesn't actually have a magnifying glass. He has his mobile phone with like a macro type lens attachment. So it looks very geeky type situation because he's looking in the scene when he's in the house, and he's got that little attachment on the back of the phone. He's looking up close against the door and the handle, and it's very like, oh, okay, where about is this going? The character's kind of refining himself, creating a momentum. But I did definitely enjoy Season 1, Episode 1 was a nice introduction, but as it progressed, it took me about 3 episodes to really get intrigued into it. So thank you very much for listening with me today, and I'm hoping you found this interesting and exciting. Definitely love to hear from you and your thoughts on what else or what other sections I could include in the show. To be honest, we could break this down so intensely that each episode could be like an hour long or 2 hours long. So I kept it quite concise today. And the deep dive, we may look at specific sections for each episode, because remember, there's a lot of episodes we've got to cover. So this is only Season 1, Episode 1. Thank you for listening with me today, and let's get on to the next episode.